Okay, today we're with Pamela D'Orazio Dean. We're in a very special and cool place here in Little Italy. Pam, tell us a little about the Italian story of coming to Cleveland.
Hi Dan.
Hi.
Great to be here with you today. Thanks for coming in. Happy to share the story. Italians are an integral part of the city. They did a lot to contribute to the city and to the region. And their history actually goes back to around the Civil War. There were a few Italians here in Cleveland that had come here for various reasons. They were professionals, they were immigrants, but not the same class of immigrants that came in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. So the late 1800s to about 1920, over 25,000 Italians immigrated to Cleveland, and these were the southern Italians, the contadini, or the peasant farmers, who wanted to escape the poverty of southern Italy and find a better life here in America. And a lot of the Italians that came to Cleveland came from Sicily and came from an area in the Mezzogiorno or central southern Italy called Campobasso. And they settled in the first Italian settlement in Cleveland, which we talk about back here a little bit, is Big Italy. And that was where Progressive Field is now, and Tri-C. It was centered on Woodland and Orange Avenues, and the neighborhood is gone. The only thing that's left of that neighborhood is what was St. Anthony Church. It is now St. Mary's Lebanese Church, but the building was originally built to house the first Italian nationality parish in Cleveland. And then, of course, the other neighborhoods like Little Italy, like Collinwood, Our Lady of Mount Carmel on the west side, St. Rocco on the west side, East 110th and Woodland, and Blue Rock also sprang up shortly after Big Italy. So Big Italy was the first, and then the other settlements kind of sprang up as the population grew and more immigrants came over.
And when the immigrants came over, were they a general trade, or what were their skills? What was their life like?
A lot of the Italians that came over were unskilled. Like I said, they were peasant farmers. So they did whatever jobs they could find, and in the census records we see many of them listed simply as laborers. So they happened to come here when the infrastructure of the city of Cleveland was being built, so they helped dig the sewers and pave the roads and build the buildings. But there were also a lot of Italians who were skilled in stone carving, and they were brought here by Giuseppe Carabelli, who was a stone carver from Porto Ceresio, Italy, and he settled in what was to become the Little Italy neighborhood and built his Lakeview Granite Monument Works right across the street on Euclid Avenue from Lakeview Cemetery, and recruited a lot of men who were talented in the art of stone carving and stone cutting to come and work for him. And if you go to Lakeview Cemetery, you can see tons of examples of the work that they did, from the Rockefeller Monument to the Wade Chapel to just many of the headstones there.
Yeah, you couldn't have the skills to make or the budget to make those kind of monuments anymore. It's just incredible.
Yes.
So now we're here in this location. We're in Little Italy, right here on Mayfield Road, very close to Murray Hill, and it smells delicious all around the neighborhood. But we're in a new facility. Tell us about this.
So you are in the Italian American Museum of Cleveland. We officially opened October of 2021. And our purpose here is to present the history of Italians in Northeast Ohio. So although we're located in the Little Italy neighborhood, we also tell the story of all the other Italian neighborhoods in Cleveland, and then also the move to the suburbs. So Italians kept making a name for themselves even when they weren't in the ethnic enclaves anymore. So we tell not only the past, but the continuing story of the Italians in this region.
So as we look around the museum, we see, and we were kidding before, there's faith, family, and ambition, and the third F would be food, for the great food here.
Yeah.
But faith is such an important part of the Italian family.
Yeah, faith But faith here, it's religious faith, but faith also in themselves, that they would be able to make the journey to come here, faith in their new country, that they would be successful here, and faith in their community, that they would find the support they need. And speaking of community, our second F is family. And that is also an earmark of Italian culture, is the importance of family, the emphasis on family. But again, it's not just blood relatives, it's the community and your fellow Italians and the towns where you came from all created that support network for the Italian Americans as they were settled here in Northeast Ohio. But the family continues today. There are still over 35 active Italian organizations in Northeast Ohio. So that family feeling, that need for family, that need for community still carries on.
And I know that one of the founders of the museum is actually national and international leader of the Italian communities.
Yeah, Basil Russo is very important in the Italian community here in Northeast Ohio. He's always been involved in various organizations and has been a champion for Italian Americans. And he took that to a national level when he became national president of the Italian Sons and Daughters of America. And then just last year, he was elected president of the Conference of major Italian American organizations. Wow. And he speaks in various cities on issues such as defending Columbus Day and Italian American rights and recognition.
Okay, when we look at this ambition exhibit, we'll see right across the street from us is, of course, Tony Brush Park.
Yeah.
And there's Tony up in the upper right.
Yeah, so we wanted to just talk a little bit on this panel about the various ways that Italians were ambitious in their lives when they came here. They wanted to make a name for themselves, they wanted to make a place for their families, and they did it in various ways. So we have sports figures and politicians and business owners, but we also have a photograph of citizenship classes, because that was very ambitious, that they were willing to study and take the test to become American citizens. And we have some kids at the Alta House learning carpentry skills, trying to improve themselves, and then just being ambitious and contributing to their community by keeping it clean and helping to build the community.
And of course, there's a sign for Orlando Bakery, which is probably the best bread
yes.
anywhere.
Yes.
As you said, there's some skilled stone carvers and the amazing things in the cemetery and the churches. And of course, the Hope Memorial Bridge, which wasn't that really in the news that much until just recently. And why don't you tell us about that a little?
Yeah, so we have a small exhibit here on the guardians of traffic, which we put up before the Cleveland baseball team declared that their new name would be the Guardians, because many of the men who were carving the faces or carving the entire statues were Italian immigrants who lived in Little Italy, and they were from the town of Oratino, which is near Campobasso, Italy. And it happened to be that the Ohio Cutstone Company, which is where the Guardians were sculpted, was located on Random Road, which is, there's a building back there that's now called the Singer Steel Building, and that's where they valet park, but at one time it was the Ohio Cutstone Company, and that is where the Guardians were carved. And the community is working on getting a historical marker to denote that this is where these amazing statues were created.
For those of us who drove across the bridge all those years, and we looked at it and it was cool and all, but now when you see them close and the skill and the scale, we're seeing so much more of that. Just what impressive work that was. And it really wasn't until the 80s that the workers started getting more recognition, when there was a proposal to actually get rid of the statues, and that was thankfully turned down by city council and the mayor, and then they decided, I think it was in 83, to do some
restoration work on the statues, and that's when more of the stories came out, that Bob Hope's father, William Henry Hope, was part of the team, and that there were also all of these Italian stone carvers that were a part of the crew, and the names started coming out, and we started to compile the list of names of all of those who worked on it and who deserve recognition. Now, there were also other immigrants that worked on it, but you know, there's a particular group from Oratino that did a lot of work.
Now, when you come into the museum, right away you're going to see this beautiful piece here. What do we have here?
Yeah, so it's kind of the centerpiece of our museum is this Sicilian carretta, or cart, and it is essentially a donkey cart, and it was used in Sicily up until the 1930s, 40s, when the automobile started to become more prominent on the island. And it was used for both utilitarian purposes, to haul dirt and whatever, and then also for ceremonial purposes. And a lot of people are surprised that it was used for everyday things because it's so beautiful, but oftentimes this was the mode of transportation that a family would have, so they invested in it, and it became, this particular style became an earmark of Sicily. And different cities in Sicily, they have slightly different shapes and slightly different artwork, but they all tell a story, and this one happens to tell the story of Christopher Columbus's voyage in 1492. And this particular style comes from Palermo. And this is a piece that we got from the old museum that used to be here in Little Italy that closed in 2007.
You know, a lot of people, probably most people not of Italian heritage, at least in Cleveland, besides coming to Little Italy for the restaurants and all, there's two major events. There's the Feast of the Assumption every year, and there's Columbus Day Parade and Festivity. Every year, a major event in Little Italy is to celebrate the Feast of the Assumption.
Yes, the feast was started by a group of men from Ripoli Mossani, Italy. And that was probably the biggest immigrant group to come to Cleveland. They used to have a club on the corner of Cornell and Random Roads, which most recently was Club Isabella. And the men decided to carry on the tradition from Italy of celebrating August 15th, which is the Feast of the Assumption for Catholics. That's the day that they observe Mary's body being assumed into heaven, body and soul. So it's an important celebration in Italy, and they brought it here to Cleveland, and from the beginning it was a pretty popular celebration amongst Italians. There would be Italians from Youngstown, communities coming up from Elyria, different areas of Italians would come up, but people who weren't Italian were kind of looking on with awe and wonder, like, what is going on in this enclave? And you know, there would be fireworks displays and the parading of the statue. But over time, it has become part and parcel of the city. So at one time it was kind of like an odd celebration for Clevelanders, and now it's a celebration for the city as a whole, where they come and appreciate Italian culture and appreciate the religious aspect of it as well.
It's really an event for your Cleveland bucket list. You can't really call yourself a Clevelander if you haven't
Absolutely.
at least been to the feast.
Yeah.
Basil Russo gave us a great explanation in video, and I'll include a link to that here, of why Columbus Day is important, why it's nothing against Native Americans and all that. And one of the main reasons is because of, in this exhibit here, we say of the lynchings in 1891. Tell us about that a little.
Yes, there were a number of Italian and Sicilian immigrants in New Orleans in the late 19th century, and they were not welcomed in the community, but they were there because there was work, and so they put up with a lot of the discrimination that they faced. And tensions got high in 1891 when the chief of police of the city was murdered. And nobody really saw how he was shot. They just found him laying in the street. And supposedly he said, as he was laying there dying, he said the word Dago. And then, there was this just uproar and this emotion where, people just wanted to attack the Italians there, and, without even trying to go through due process or, think a little bit more about who it might have been. It was like he said the word Deo, they were already upset that they were living there, so they immediately started to arrest a lot of Italians, and they were actually acquitted by trial. There was no evidence found to blame them, but as they were being held in jail, the city got into this fervor of anger and rage and hate, and just stormed into the jail and pulled those 11 Italians out and lynched them. And this has been documented as the largest lynching in the United States. Now, after this, in 1892, it happened to be the 400th anniversary of Columbus's voyage, so the country was sort of gearing up to celebrate that, because Columbus back then was a hero to all Americans. And the Americans were also looking for heroes of their own, not connected to England, because they had broken with England. So Columbus was truly an American hero at that time, in 1892. So Benjamin Harrison, who was president, was gearing up to celebrate, but then he realized that because Columbus was an Italian, if we celebrate Columbus, we would be honoring the Italians and kind of, trying to make amends for what happened in New Orleans. But then the Italians sort of adopted Columbus for themselves. In various communities, Columbus Day became an ongoing celebration. And statues started going up in the various Italian enclaves as a way for them to say, we're American, we belong here because one of our own helped to discover this country. So, I always say if people are against Columbus, that's their opinion, but at least understand where the Italians are coming from in the reason why they think he is someone to be admired. It's a long history rooted in discrimination, and it was a way for them to legitimize their presence in the country.
And here in the museum, you can see, a lot of reasons why Columbus matters, and read that and all through that. But as you say, it's honoring the explorer. That's one thing. But Columbus Day is almost more important as a celebration of Italian heritage.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah, it's we're here, recognize the contributions that we've made, and help us celebrate that. And it's certainly not closed off to Italians. We want all communities to celebrate with us on that day, as much as we celebrate other communities as well. So the Italians don't want to not have an Indigenous Peoples Day or not have any other nationality day, but we want Columbus Day as a day to recognize and celebrate our heritage.
And that's what makes Cleveland and similar cities so exciting. There's Columbus Day, there's St. Patrick's Day Parade, there's Polish Constitution Day, there's Juneteenth, an African American community, and
Yeah.
Puerto Rican Day Parade. That's other nationalities take part in it and enjoy it, and it just makes us a richer community.
Absolutely, yes. The diversity makes us stronger.
So here we are. We just got a taste of the museum here. We're talking with Pamela Durazio Dean. What's your title? The curator, the executive director?
So I'm the director of the Italian American Museum of Cleveland, but I also serve as the curator of Italian American history at the Western Reserve Historical Society. So even though IMCLE is a separate organization, there is a partnership with WRHS because they have a fantastic Italian American collection.
So if people want to come down and see more and see this in person, tell us where to find more information, what your hours are, and a little of that.
Our web address is IAMCLE, so IAMCLE.org, IAMCLE. And we are located on Mayfield Road, right in the heart of Cleveland's Little Italy, next to Presti's Bakery, and also next to Maxie's. So we're of course sandwiched by two delicious places. So you could come down to the neighborhood, grab some lunch, visit the museum, or visit the museum and go to dinner. There's lots to do down here, and I think having a historical component in the neighborhood is very important because people know there's history here. They know the history is long and interesting, and now there's a place where they can learn a little bit more about it.
Well, now you've had a taste of the Italian-American Museum of Cleveland, and I think it's time for us to have a taste of some of this great Italian food next door. So thank you, Pam, and we'll see you soon.
You're welcome.